We've been handed a stack of sources today, and at the very top of that stack is a PDF document with a title that is just deeply, wonderfully ironic.
Yeah, it really is.
It's called Music for Libraries. And I mean, just think about that for a second. The very first rule of the library, the golden rule that's drilled into us from childhood, is absolute uncompromising silence.
Right, you walk in, your voice immediately drops to a whisper.
Exactly. Your footsteps slow down, you try not to make a sound. So why are we looking at this highly technical 395 megabyte blueprint designed to pump 8 straight hours of engineered sound into a space where you were supposed to be completely quiet?
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to figure out exactly what this document is attempting to do.
And it's doing a lot.
It really is. We are exploring a concept called functional ambient architecture. We're going to look at how specific, highly engineered soundscapes are being used to drastically improve study focus, encourage what the creator calls slow cognition, and ultimately transform the way you experience public intellectual spaces. Because it really is a masterclass in how modern minimalist trends are quietly shaping the environments where we actually sit down and think.
It totally is. So where do we even begin with this thing?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the operation, coupled with, the contradiction of how it was made in the first place.
Yeah, the production side is wild.
It is. This document isn't just a mood board or like a quick Spotify playlist concept. It outlines an incredibly rigid framework for an 8-hour, 14-minute, and 9-second free MP3 mix.
Over 8 hours? That's a full workday.
Exactly. And it's comprised of 183 distinct tracks. But the real paradox is the toolset they used to build it. It's this deeply collaborative process that utilized human oversight, but directing a massive stack of open source and AI tools.
Right. We are talking about Google Flow Music, Claude.ai, ChatGPT.
All routed through an alpha version of Audacity 4.
And running on a Linux Ubuntu 26.04 operating system. Like, that is an incredibly aggressive, bleeding-edge tech stack.
It really is.
You're looking at the absolute forefront of artificial intelligence. These are tools that are basically the definition of modern digital noise, right? Constant updates, rapid-fire information generation.
Yeah, they're inherently chaotic.
But yet they are being marshaled here to create something that is supposed to feel ancient, organic, and perfectly silent.
Which is such a deliberate choice,
Yeah.
The creator is taking the chaotic potential of AI and just forcing it through this microscopic filter of human restraint.
A microscopic filter, I like that.
Well, that restraint is totally necessary because of what they're trying to achieve. I mean, the prompt calls this entire endeavor functional ambient architecture.
And that's the phrase that really tripped me up at first, because if you are listening to this right now on a commute, looking at the buildings outside your window, you might be thinking architecture is concrete.
Right. It's steel. It's glass.
Yeah, it's the physical boundary of a room. I had the exact same thought when I first read the source material. Like, how can audio, something completely invisible, be considered architecture?
Well, it requires a slight shift in how we define a space. When we think of traditional physical architecture, we think about how walls, hallways, and doorways dictate our physical movement.
Sure. Like a narrow hallway forces you to walk in a straight line.
Exactly. Or, a grand cathedral ceiling physically pulls your gaze upward. It literally changes your posture. The theory of ambient architecture argues that sound does the exact same thing to your psychological and cognitive movement.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it draws heavy inspiration from what the document calls contemplative modernism and post-war public space futurism. The idea is that the auditory environment is just as crucial to the structure of a space as the drywall itself.
Okay, I have an analogy for this. Tell me if this tracks.
Let's hear it.
So most music you listen to is like a painting hung on a wall. A painting demands that you stop, look at it, and process it, right? It wants your active attention.
Right, it's the focal point.
But functional ambient architecture is more like the lighting design in a room or like the air conditioning. It is invisible infrastructure. It changes how you feel, it regulates the temperature of your thoughts, and it guides how you move through the space without you ever consciously noticing it is operating.
That is the perfect way to look at it. It is invisible infrastructure designed for very specific public arenas.
Right, because this isn't for your living room.
No, not at all. The creator explicitly targets spaces like observatories, museums, quiet transit hubs, empty terminals, and future civic interiors.
Okay, so massive shared spaces.
Yeah, and the stated goal for all these environments is to support peaceful movement through space. It isn't there to entertain you.
It's not background music.
Right. It is there to facilitate an environment where your mind can wander safely without colliding with jarring environmental friction.
But, I mean, to build that kind of invisible infrastructure, you can't just use standard materials. If you put a heavy metal guitar track in a museum...
It shatters the peaceful movement immediately.
Exactly. So how are they physically constructing a sound that stays completely invisible?
It starts with an incredibly rigorous acoustic blueprint. It's heavily focused on the actual mathematical frequencies of the sound itself. Because the ultimate goal is sustained mental concentration, the prompt dictates that the audio encoding must be locked in at 220/50 Hz.
And running at 112 kilobits per second. Yeah.
Right.
But let's translate those numbers, because to most people, 20/50 Hz is just technical jargon. What does that actually do to the sound you hear?
So, standard CD quality audio, like the music you stream every day on your phone, is usually encoded at 44/100 Hz.
Okay.
That sample rate captures the full spectrum of human hearing, right up to the highest, brightest, most piercing treble sounds.
Like the crash of a cymbal.
Exactly. By deliberately cutting that encoding rate exactly in half to 20/50 Hz, they're physically decapitating the high end of the audio spectrum. They're mathematically preventing sharp, bright sounds from existing in the digital file.
Wow. So it physically forces the audio to sound muffled, or like warm and distant.
Yeah, it mimics the acoustic effect of hearing a piano playing 3 rooms away behind a closed door.
It's forcing you to experience it through a barrier.
Precisely. It creates an artificial sense of distance, which translates psychologically to safety. And this ties directly into another major rule in the prompt: the complete avoidance of sharp transients.
Oh, the transients. Yeah, biologically speaking, a sharp transient like the sudden smack of a snare drum or the hard pluck of a guitar string.
Or even a branch snapping in the woods.
Yes, that triggers our mammalian fight-or-flight response. Your amygdala fires. It's a sound that demands your brain's immediate attention because evolutionarily, a sudden sharp noise meant danger.
Right, there's a predator nearby. And an alert response is the absolute enemy of deep focus.
Right, because when your brain registers a transient, your concentration breaks.
Your eyes leave the page, and you have to rebuild your cognitive momentum from scratch. So the prompt entirely bans bright upper-mid frequencies and transients.
So what do they use instead?
It prioritizes warm, low mids, gentle air frequencies, and what it beautifully describes as diffuse reverb clouds.
Diffuse reverb clouds. I love that phrasing.
The engineering goal is extremely low listener fatigue. Because if you are sitting in a library for 8 hours studying for the bar exam, your ears and your brain cannot afford to get tired fighting the environment.
The actual instruments they use to generate those diffuse reverb clouds are fascinating, too. I mean, if you're trying to support deep reading, you aren't using a standard orchestra.
No, the prompt demands highly specific, almost bizarre textures.
Yeah. Sparse piano fragments, distant process chamber instruments, muted vibraphone resonance, and soft bass clarinet textures. It honestly sounds like an ensemble tuning up underwater.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is really about blending those muted natural instruments with electronic ambient drone layers. But the prompt goes a step further into environmental sound design.
This is the part that blew my mind.
Right. It explicitly calls for the integration of softened HVAC ambience, faint electromagnetic hums, and granular environmental layers.
Yeah, and I noticed one incredibly specific detail in their texture requirements that absolutely floored me. Among all the electronic drones and muted clarinets, the prompt requires barely audible page turn-like textures.
Yeah. Page turn.
They literally took the quintessential acoustic signature of a library, the sound of someone slowly turning the heavy paper page of a book, and wove it directly into the foundational drone of the music.
It is a brilliant textural choice, though, because it completely blurs the line between the physical space you were sitting in and the audio landscape you are experiencing.
You no longer know if the sound of the page turning came from the person sitting across the table from you or from the invisible infrastructure of the room itself.
Exactly. But none of this, the 20/50 Hz decapitation, the HVAC hums, the page turns, none of it is just a technical exercise. Every single frequency is serving a highly specific emotional purpose.
Right, they are trying to paint a very specific scene. The prompt provides an immersive visual for the AI and human collaborators to aim for. I actually want to read this directly so you can picture it.
Go for it.
Okay, so imagine you are walking through a large modern library. It is dusk. A light rain is falling outside, hitting the massive glass windows. You are surrounded by vast architecture, discovering ideas alone beneath soft reading lamps.
It's so evocative.
It really is. That is the exact psychological space this audio is engineered to put you in.
And the question we have to ask is, why that specific scene? Why dusk? Why the sound of rain on glass?
Yeah, why not a sunny morning?
It comes down to emotional regulation. We live in an era characterized by constant notifications, bright screens, and informational chaos. The music is designed to act as a psychological shield against that chaos.
A shield.
Yeah, it is engineered to make the listener feel emotionally safe, academically sacred, introspective, and quietly hopeful.
Okay, but wait, let me challenge that for a second.
Yes.
Because I look at this list of descriptors. Soft edges, safe spaces, psychologically calming, suspended, unresolved chords. How is this not just spa music?
I knew you were going to ask that.
I mean, is the ultimate goal of contemplative modernism really just to pipe the background track of a massage parlor into our public libraries?
Okay, but spa music is designed for absence. It is an auditory anesthetic.
Anesthetic.
Yeah, when you go to a spa, the music is engineered to help you tune out, to go to sleep, to completely shut off your cognitive functions. This ambient architecture is designed to make you think deeper. It is a scaffold, not an anesthetic.
Right, but if my brain is completely relaxed by both, isn't the outcome exactly the same? I'm calm either way, you know?
Not really, because being calm and being cognitively engaged are two very different states. Spa music often relies on overt, syrupy melodies or predictable new age loops that just wash over you and demand zero processing.
Okay, that's true.
The prompt here firmly dictates that the sound must be deeply human and intelligent. The production's aesthetic is described as pristine but slightly aged. It wants to provide analog warmth to make the space feel lived in, but it strictly warns against nostalgia fetishism.
Oh, nostalgia fetishism.
Right, it cannot sound like a cheap, sentimental imitation of the past. It needs to keep your brain at a low, sustainable simmer, encouraging wandering thought and rigorous academic focus. It keeps you alert, but removes the environmental friction so your intellect can actually climb.
Okay, that distinction makes a lot of sense. Spa music shuts the brain off. Ambient architecture turns the brain on but protects it from outside interference.
Exactly.
And to achieve that precise balance, to ensure it never accidentally slips into elevator music or a meditation cliche, the creator had to enforce a massive list of restrictions.
Yeah, the rules of restraint, what the creator bans from the audio, are arguably more important than the textures they actually include.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The ban list is just extensive. There are no hooks whatsoever. There are no obvious melodies, no vocals, no chants, no spoken word.
None.
And absolutely no percussion beyond extremely subtle pulse suggestions.
Because anything else constitutes a form of emotional or rhythmic manipulation. Yeah. The core philosophy here is to avoid anything that tells the listener how they should feel or when they should feel it. That means absolutely no rhythmic insistence, no dramatic tension, no jazz flourishes, no EDM structures, and no neoclassical sentimentality.
The prompt specifically bans cinematic crescendos too, which I think is the most vital rule for deep reading.
Oh, 100%.
Because a crescendo is a musical swell, right? It builds volume and intensity to force an emotional climax. If you are deeply engrossed in a dense textbook and the invisible infrastructure around you suddenly swells into a massive climax, your attention is hijacked.
Completely.
The music has successfully manipulated you, but in doing so, it just ruined your academic focus.
Exactly. The environment must remain neutral but supportive. And if you remove all drums, all melodies, and all crescendos, you fundamentally alter how time feels within the audio.
How so?
Well, the pacing becomes glacial and intensely patient. The prompt operates at a perceived tempo of 40 to 60 beats per minute.
Which is essentially the resting heart rate of a very calm, relaxed person.
Yes, but even at that slow pulse, the rhythm is expected to often disappear entirely into those diffuse reverb clouds we talked about earlier.
Wow.
The harmonic changes do not shift on a predictable downbeat like a pop song. They emerge slowly over minutes. The creator uses this stunning metaphor in the prompt. The harmonic changes should be like shifting weather through glass.
Shifting weather through glass. I mean, think about what that actually looks like. If you were sitting in a room reading, you might suddenly notice that the pages of your book have gotten slightly darker.
Right.
Because a thick cloud has moved in front of the sun outside. But you never actually saw the cloud move.
You didn't perceive the transition.
Exactly. You simply realized the environment had altered around you. Translating that visual phenomenon into audio is just an incredible concept.
It really is. But it requires the audio engineer to stretch a single chord transition over such a long period of time that the human ear cannot pinpoint the exact moment the chord changed.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. And achieving that slow shifting weather effect brings up a monumental logistical challenge. I mean, we are talking about deploying this sound for over 8 hours in a shared civic building.
Oh man, yeah. Anyone who has ever worked a shift at a retail store or a coffee shop knows the absolute psychological misery of the background music loop.
The worst.
The human brain is an unparalleled pattern recognition machine. If I'm sitting in a public reading room for 4 hours and my brain realizes that the subtle bass clarinet drone just restarted its pattern, my focus is shattered.
The illusion is gone.
The illusion of the invisible infrastructure is totally broken. So how do you deploy 183 tracks without driving the occupants completely crazy?
Well, this is where the techniques for seamless civic audio become paramount. The prompt demands a long-form immersive structure.
Okay.
When you are dealing with an 8-hour mix, you cannot have a 2-second gap of silence between tracks. You cannot have a noticeable intro or outro for each piece. The architecture relies entirely on seamless, overlapping transitions.
But beyond just crossfading the tracks, how do they hide the loop?
It comes down to the spatial design of the audio itself. The prompt requires a wide stereo field, but an unfocused center image.
Okay, wait. How does an audio engineer actually unfocus the center of a room?
So if you put on headphones right now and listen to a standard pop track, the lead singer's voice and the snare drum are engineered to sit dead center inside your head.
Right. Right between your ears.
Exactly. It acts as an acoustic anchor. Your brain knows exactly where the sound is originating from. It is pointing directly at you. But if you hollow out that center image, if you take those sparse piano fragments and muted vibraphones and push them to the extreme left and right of the stereo field, the sound no longer points at you.
Oh, I see. It washes around you from the periphery.
Precisely. The acoustic anchor is removed entirely. Without a focused center, there is nothing for the brain's pattern recognition software to latch onto.
That's so smart.
The audio becomes ambient in the truest sense of the word. It is everywhere and nowhere at once, with no obvious beginning and no discernible end.
And to give the AI and human collaborators a final target for this unfocused, endless space, the creator provided a list of atmospheric influences.
Yes.
This isn't about specific sounds anymore. This is about capturing the spirit of a space. And the list reads like modern poetry. They wanted the audio to emulate late-night university architecture,
Archival rooms,
northern winter light,
slow elevators.
forgotten reading rooms, and urban rain after midnight.
I mean, those visual and architectural cues are so vital for designing sound in shared spaces.
They really are.
They represent environments where human beings naturally lower their voices, slow their breathing, and turn inward. If you can successfully translate the psychological weight of an archival room or the diffused quality of northern winter light into an auditory frequency, you have achieved functional ambient architecture.
You really have.
You have built a space that demands absolutely nothing from the people inside it, but provides a rock-solid foundation for profound focus.
It completely reframes the concept of a quiet space. It makes you realize that silence in a library or a museum doesn't have to just be an absence of noise. It can be an engineered canvas.
Exact.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all of this together, the 2020 50 hertz encoding that decapitates the high frequencies, the banning of transients and emotional crescendos, the integration of literal HVAC hums and page turns, the glacial 40 beat per minute pacing, it all points to one monumental effort. Ambient architecture uses profound restraint to turn a chaotic, distracting public area into a highly functional sanctuary for deep thought.
And the ultimate measure of success for this project is stated right in the text. True ambient architecture shouldn't feel like a playlist someone decided to put on the loudspeakers.
Right.
It should feel, quoting the creator here, as though it has always been playing softly somewhere beyond the walls. It is meant to become a permanent, comforting fixture of the building itself, as vital and unnoticeable as the air in the room.
Invisible infrastructure. It's a concept that really makes you reconsider the built environments we move through every single day.
It really does.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to explore on your own. The next time you walk into a seemingly quiet public space, a massive library, an empty transit terminal, or a museum gallery, stop for a moment and really listen to the silence around you. Is it truly just an empty room? Or are you actually moving through a carefully constructed acoustic landscape invisibly engineered to calm your pulse and guide your thoughts?